Hi, my name is Jason Spangler, the CEO of the Innovation and Value Initiative. During the 5th Annual IVI Method Summit, we explored patient-centered health technology assessment, or HTA, and charted its future course through discussions, methodologies, and networking with thought leaders. We aim to offer actionable steps for stakeholders to implement patient-centered HTA effectively. The 5th Annual IVI Method Summit panel presentation, titled, "Is Real Option Value Really an Option for Today's HTA?" Real option value calculates the benefit patients and caregivers receive from treatments that extend life, giving patients the chance to benefit from future treatment advances. Is this new method ready to be put into practice? And what would it mean for people with life-threatening conditions? This will feature, as moderator, Rick Chapman from IVI, and speakers Zubair Ansari from the Cancer Support Community, Meng Li from Tufts Medical Center, and John Campbell from the National Pharmaceutical Council.
So I have some bad news and some good news. The bad news is this will be the most technical panel of the day. The good news is it's right before lunch, so you've got that to look forward to. So I've been asked, I'll invite the panelists now to come up on the stage. But while they're doing that, I've been asked to give a definition of real option value because it's something that people may not be that familiar with. Real option value in health is actually similar to real options in the financial world. So if you're familiar with that, you can kind of analogize to this. But real option value really calculates the benefit that patients and caregivers receive from treatments that extend life, giving patients the chance to benefit from future treatment advances. So to put it another way, a therapy may extend your life long enough so that you live to see the day that another treatment becomes available for your condition. And that is, of course, valuable to patients and their families. So we've invited our panelists here today to discuss this topic and specifically the practicality of using it in health technology assessments. So today we have our panelist Zubair Ansari. He is Executive Director of the Cancer Support Community. Meng Li, who is Assistant Professor at CEVR, or the Center for Evaluation of Value and Risk in Health at the Tufts Medical Center. And John Campbell, who's the Chief Science Officer at the National Pharmaceutical Council. As before, if you want to see their full bios, they are available via the QR code. But I'll just start with asking each of you to quickly introduce yourselves to the audience. Zubair.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, thank you. I want to make sure I do this right. So my name is Zubair Ansari. My name is pronounced like a bear in the zoo. I am the Executive Director for the Cancer Support Community, Washington, D.C. We are an organization that's about 40 plus years old. We have almost 200 cancer support centers across the globe, but we didn't have a CSC, is what we refer to it. We didn't have one in the DMV area at all, so in Washington, D.C. So my team and I have developed the first CSC here in DC, and we're actually having our grand opening in May. We're super, super excited. And our goal was really to help mitigate not just health inequity, but offering free cancer support to folks who need it the most. And we've had some amazing partnerships in the last year and a half since I've joined, and we've been able to build our brick and mortar in a part of DC that truly needs it. So we're actually in Ward 8 of DC, if you're familiar with DC. And we're just super, super excited about this engagement. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meng Li. I'm an assistant professor at Tufts Medical Center. So I spent maybe 80% of my time doing research, 15%, doing mentoring and some teaching, and I would say 5% of my time advocating for real option value. So my training is in health economics and outcome research. So most of my research focused on quantifying novel elements of value.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, let's try this. Is this working? No. Okay, how about this?
We're not there yet. There we are. Okay, it's a leg. Hi, everyone. I'm John Campbell, and I'm the Chief Science Officer at National Pharmaceutical Council. My background is in academics and health economics and outcomes research as a field. And after spending a number of years at the University of Colorado, joined ICER to do work there in heading up their health economics efforts, and recently joined NPC. And a passion of mine is making good decisions. I believe that we can do so together by sharing an understanding of good evidence and how that flows into decision-making processes. And I'm really fortunate to work at an organization that also shares that passion for generating quality evidence to bring together for decision-making purposes in health policy research. And Rick, thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being here. So I'll start with some questions. I just wanted to point out first that this year or last year was IVI's first call for papers. And it was a call for papers around how do we make sure that we're valuing innovation in health technology assessment, really capturing that value. And Dr. Lee was the first prize winner in that, and her paper was on real option value. And so we're really thankful that she took part in that call for papers, and would really like to see if we can pull this method into practice and make sure that we are using this to innovate, to value innovation where we need to. So my first question is to you. Is this method ready to be put into practical use in current HTA processes? And one of the things that came out in the real option value is there are some uncertain things you have to think about. You have to project the pipeline in a certain condition area and predict when it's going to come into actual play and matter for patients. And so I wonder if you could just talk about, is it ready to be used, and what do we need to do to overcome some of those uncertainties and maybe skepticism that people may have around some of the assumptions we have to make there?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I want to put on the real option value advocate hat first, and I want to say yes. Just a little bit of background on, the real option value research. So we published a few papers where we integrated real option value into, cost effectiveness analysis. So we're able to quantify real option value in terms of additional quality gains or quality adjusted life years gains. We did the analyses in several metastatic cancers, and in the studies we quantified the uncertainty. So I think in terms of the methods, in terms of the HTA methods, we have a good start. Of course, we need to look at real option value in other disease areas as well. I think for different disease, for different treatment, the method is going to be, slightly different. We probably need to adapt the methods a little bit, but I do think we have a good start. And I think, I really want, all the researchers out there to start applying real option value, and then, we will know what there is that needs to be done, that needs to be refined and improved. So in terms of uncertainty, I do agree that, there's a lot of uncertainty around real option value, around, what's coming through the pipeline, what health is going to be in the future, what treatment landscape is going to be in the future. But again, I do think the nature of uncertainty for real option value is very similar to that of the conventional value. Yes, we do need to forecast the efficacy for future treatment, but we're sort of doing that already for the treatment under evaluation. So I think increasingly we're seeing treatments being approved with surrogate endpoints, and also in single arm trials. And we need to do a lot of extrapolation, in the cost effectiveness models. So we're already doing that, and we need to do that too, for real option value. So I do think it's important to apply the methods more widely, and I think during the application, we'll just get better and better at estimating real option value.
So get better by using it, by practicing. John, I'd like to turn to you next. As somebody who's recently been involved in doing HTAs, how practical do you see this? Is this something that you'd be eager to include in an HTA, or do you still see issues here?
Tough question, Rick, to start off. And so, all right. So I would say it's a bit of both. In the case of real option value, I think it's a promising pedal in a broader understanding of value. And there are some challenges in quantitatively into conventional understandings of value, mainly in ways that we understand from Meng and others in their research that there can be improvements in health related to future opportunities for interventions. You know, if we extend life or if we slow down progression for patients, they have other opportunities to benefit from future interventions, and that's wonderful for patients. So I think we're stuck with that reality. And then on a disconnect with conventional value being, we don't know the price for that future intervention that may also improve the patient's health. And without that information, we're missing part of the equation that's often used in conventional value, and that's tied to cost effectiveness analyses. And so without that cost component to the future intervention, we're left with only, there's a missing piece to the puzzle.
Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, I think, I mean, I agree with what John said, but I just want to say, I mean, especially, you know, today it's a patient-centered, you know, method summit. And I just want to say that I think real option value has, you know, it's very relevant outside of HTA, outside of cost effectiveness analysis. So, you know, like you know, for example, just imagine that you're a patient with a severe condition that, you know, that there aren't a lot of good treatments. And, you know, if there's a gene therapy that's about to be approved, you know, very soon, and I think being able to survive to that gene therapy becomes available, you know, can makes a lot of difference. So I think this is why, you know, real option value is so relevant, you know, in, you know, clinical shared decision making. So we actually did a oncologist survey recently. So we surveyed about, you know, 200 oncologists, you know, give them scenarios of, you know, a metastatic cancer patient. And we asked them, you know, if their treatment recommendation would be influenced by products in the pipeline. And overwhelmingly, you know, the majority, over 2/3, you know, of oncologists said, yes, you know, their treatment recommendation would definitely be influenced by treatments that are in the pipeline because, you know, what they currently give to their patients may increase their chance of surviving to when the new innovations come along. You know, and we also have indirect evidence from patients, you know, like after they heard about, you know, breakthroughs, you know, the news about the clinical trial results of breakthrough, after they heard that, you know, the effect was pretty significant. You know, they actually change their current treatments, you know, into more aggressive treatments so that they can live longer to see that new innovation. So, I mean, I do think it's important to account for, you know, real option value in health technology assessment, and we've developed some methods. But I mean, I feel like we kind of solve the problem, or we are solving the problem in reverse order, I mean, I think that we should probably first, you know, understand the patient preference, right? Understand the real world impact of real option value. And then, you know, we incorporate those into health technology assessments to make it patient-centered. But we kind of solve the problem reversely. You know, we figure out the methods to, you know, forecast future innovations and incorporate them into cost-effectiveness analyses. And now we're asking us the, you know, the question, does it matter to patients? You know, is it going to change outcome in the real world? Is it going to impact, you know, real world decision making? So, I mean, even though we're solving the problem in reverse order, and I do think we're solving the problem.
Thanks. That's a great lead into my next question, which was to Zubair. We just heard an example from oncology, and cancer certainly seems like an area where real option value would matter a lot because of the life expectancy issues and treatment advances that are coming along. So is this something that you think patients care about, or is it on their radar, or should it be something that we're going out to patients and asking about their preferences?
Yeah, so in the short answer is yes. With real option value, is it important to patients? I think patients, especially folks that are diagnosed with cancer, and what we're seeing in a lot of our distress screening is for them, their value might be very, very different than other types of diagnoses or other types of tumors. For example, in our research, 76% of patients find value in how closely connected they are to the care team. So how do you define value for that type of patient category? Is how connected are they? So there are solutions that are available in the cancer space, specifically CSC that we've worked on, that allow folks to kind of be part of an ability to be interactive, not just with their care team, but also to be able to kind of put together a very social approach to their care. So, we have, and this is not a commercial, but it's out there, it's available. We have a CSS tool. It's a cancer support source tool that we use for our patient clientele across the country, actually across the globe. And it allows patients, family members, and caregivers. It's kind of like a Facebook on steroids for patients who are diagnosed or impacted by cancer. And the angle that we take to your question is, it's not just value to the patients or participants. You also have to focus on what's the value to the caregiver. And if you can put more emphasis on value on caregiver as well as patient together, I think that approach is going to really yield better outcomes. And that's kind of what we're about. We're really about not just focusing on the participant, but also the caregivers as well.
Thanks. I'll turn to the other two panelists. Any other conditions or scenarios you think where real option value is going to be especially important beyond cancer?
Yeah, I think in general, real option value is going to have the biggest impact on value when, the technology advancement is rapid and when future innovations are likely to improve outcome significantly. Because real option value is this value of bridging, patients to next innovations. So I think, outside of cancer, I think we have some research in multiple sclerosis going on as well. And I think there's some interest in Alzheimer's disease, even though I guess the technology advancement isn't that fast. But I think the ability to slow down disease progression and keep patients in the mild stage can potentially have a lot of real option value, when new treatments come along.
I think the key there is the bridging word. And so when you have a technology that actually is bridging to a potential cure, those are really exciting technologies and ones we may have more of in the future.
Thanks. So I'm going to go a little out of order in my questions here. You brought up Alzheimer's disease and the fact that there's not maybe as robust a pipeline as we'd like to have there. So one of the things that people might wonder about is for a treatment area that has a strong pipeline and a lot of research going on, it seems there's going to be more real option value than a place where there's less research going on. And so what would you say to a patient who maybe has a disease that doesn't have a lot of research going on, it's kind of neglected, and now they're finding out that the relative value is going to be even lower than something that has a more robust pipeline? Is that a real issue, and how should we think about that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question, and I think that's why the patient perspective, the patient preference is very important. I think you're right. For disease area where there's not a lot of things going on, and HTA would tell us the real option value is low. But if you ask the patients, if they have a severe disease that have no good treatment and has a very small pipeline, they may actually value a very slim chance of surviving to future innovations greatly, right? More greatly than, some non-life-threatening conditions with a lot of treatments and a very robust pipeline. So I think, I think that's why it's important to, involve the patients, in valuing real option value. And also, I just want to say that, real option value is one of the petals in the value flower, and it's one factor that we consider in this, hopefully holistic approach to value, to treatments. And other things we also need to consider, unmet medical need, right? So a condition with a very dry, with a very small pipeline, may have very high unmet medical needs, which, because of that, we may give it, higher priority in terms of pricing and reimbursement, even though the real option value may be low. So yeah, I do think we need to consider all of these things together. And I think the best way to consider all of these together is to, just ask the patients, right? Ask about their preferences.
Any thoughts, John or Zubair?
I couldn't agree more with that. I think that sometimes we call that the severity pedal that Dr. Lee was just talking about is really an important aspect to also consider. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think the thing that I'll add to that is sometimes we assume that a very rare disease has a lot of research, dedicated to it, but we're also finding that, if we're talking about health inequity here, if we can mitigate health inequity by involving more, for example, clinical trials, was brought up earlier, but if we had increased minority clinical trials, then we can start targeting diseases and rare diseases, or even common diseases that are impacting a minority group that there might not be a lot of research in. So we have to kind of figure out and balance what our approach is. And at Cancer Support Community, we're always trying to push for increased minority clinical trial and participation, because we're kind of at the grassroots. And I think Sneha said that best, like it's really at the grassroots level. So I think that is related to the question that you're posing as well.
Great, thanks. So we need to balance both within real option value, how we're measuring that, but also balance it with the other, flower petals on the value flower from ISPOR. So I wanted to turn now to ask about how real option value and its inclusion might impact pricing and reimbursement decisions for new therapies. And, should payers consider this when they're thinking about reimbursement or coverage?
Well, I know we have at least one payer in the room, so that question might be better posed to others. But again, as I was sort of alluding to in my opening remark, a conventional value assessment without an understanding of the price of the future innovation, we could be left with finding the exact same thing from conventional cost effectiveness. And so I think that's what we're talking about right here is how do we move that forward, and how do we come to some solutions in understanding if patients really care about this issue and real option value, how is that reflected in things like decisions around pricing and reimbursement? So I don't know that we have quantitatively solved for that, but Meng and others have done work that look at the percent impact on various outcomes that matter to patients. Survival is one, but there are many others in the quality of life or functioning space that could be included. And thinking about those impacts on the percent improvement kind of measurement scale might be a step in the right direction in discussing matters of a technology with payers and others.
Any other thoughts? Zubair, should payers be considering this?
I agree with John. I think it's imperative that there needs to be more inclusion. I think, in honor of National Social Workers Month, March is National Social, I can't, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we should look at different varying levels of intervention. So if social workers are not being compensated for under a certain payer plan for certain CPT codes, and I think there needs to be a more federal push for things of that nature. So yeah, I think reimbursement is very key. Everything that we do at CSE is provided free of charge, but we don't have a magic checkbook, unfortunately. So we have to like depend on funding and donations. It would be really nice if an organization or any cancer support organization where things are not necessarily just about the medical discipline, but everything around, like that holistic approach. And if you looked at reimbursement from that perspective, it kind of changes the angles on things. It'd be really cool if we really invested our time on that, because there's real value to participants and patients for things at times that are non-medical as well. So we just have to kind of balance that out.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I just want to add that, so my research and other people's research, so mostly oncology, metastatic cancers, and looking at immunotherapies and targeted therapies. And the real option value is about 10 to 20% of the conventional value. Of course, with a lot of caveats, with, very high uncertainty, but it's not a negligible number. It's not a negligible amount of value. And I do think it's worth, thinking more about it. And I think potentially even for, more severe condition, if we take patient preference into consideration, it could even be higher. So that's why I think it's definitely worth, doing more research in this area and thinking more about it.
Thanks. So my final question is really about if we think real option value should be included in HTA, how should different stakeholders work together to make sure that it's being pulled into practice and maybe refined over time? We've heard a little bit about that, researchers and patients in terms of patient preferences, but I wonder if you had any thoughts about how we can get these folks to work together.
A question for me?
All of you, really.
Yeah, so I'll start. I mean, the first two sessions of this morning, I found them, super informative, especially the point on, individual patients, the point on, transparency in terms of stakeholder engagement. And I mentioned earlier, I think in real option value research so far, even though we sort of figured out the methods, for quantification or for integration into HTA, but we're kind of missing, the patient piece. And I do think it's very important for researchers to work with patients to understand, how they think about it, not just how it would potentially impact whether they would be more likely to get this drug or not, but how they think about future innovations. Because I do think, surviving to future innovations or, just survival alone, it not only has impact on health, but other aspects of their lives, right? The caregivers and productivity. And the overall improvement in utility and well-being from potential future innovations can be significant. So I think really understanding how patients think about future innovations in health and both the other aspects of their lives is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key to really get multiple stakeholders involved is to involve them. And I think it is patient-centric. We talk a lot about patient and participant-centric, but are we truly doing that? Are we deliberately asking people that are impacted, for example, in our case, by cancer? Ward 7 and Ward 8 have a 30% higher chance of having cancer, a higher rate of cancer than 1 through 6. So why are we spending our time, not to say we shouldn't, in 1 through 6, but we should truly be helping and eliminating and mitigating that inequity by talking to folks that are in Ward 7, Ward 8, and trying to drive decisions to help them feel like they're more aligned in the system. So I think we do that in other industries really well, where we involve folks that are probably not as represented, but represent a higher percent of that, for example, tumor or disease. It's no different from a geographical factor from my perspective. So I think to really get multiple stakeholders of the game, you got to find the appropriate folks to come to the table, whether it's clinicians, participants, neighbors, business owners. Everybody has a story to tell. And I think from our perspective, the more we get involved, and one last thing I'll mention is advocacy. We talked about that earlier. A lot of corporations are having advocacy arms. Well, that's great, but also make sure that you're representing your population appropriately and accurately and very effectively. So I think it's a mixture of all that. It's a very difficult slide that we're gonna have to go down, but it needs to be done, and things need to be more deliberate.
I might just add two other tidbits. One is I think there is a bit of movement in model building to move toward condition or disease level models rather than treatment specific models, and that might be able to facilitate some of the folding in of real option value. So that's idea number one, more on the technical modeler side of stakeholders. But on joint, multi-stakeholder kind of engagement and work that can be done together, I think the checklist that Dr. Lee's published is a great starting point for discussion across stakeholders in thinking about some of those pieces are a little more technical, but others are much more in the patient voice domain. And so coming together on a checklist to see whether real option value is important could be a great first step.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for putting that plug for the paper that will be published soon, and we'll have that checklist in it. So we'd like to turn now to the audience for questions. You've got a few minutes for that. See some over here.
Is it, should I just keep talking? Yeah. Hi, Claire Sachs again from the first panel. Just on that last comment, if you end up going to disease research, disease level research, instead of treatment level research, that will give you the opportunity to study comorbidities. One of the issues that I have with research in the healthcare space across the board is that diseases are studied by themselves. There are a lot of us in this country and around the world who have more than one. And they have to coexist in our bodies together, which means they all affect each other. Doesn't matter if it's a separate system. If you have a bad day with one, it could end up a domino effect with half the others. So if we end up going to disease level research, please do that with perhaps the comorbidity goal as a future plan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Shelby Harrington, Avalier Health. I am not a researcher, I'm a nurse. And so what you're describing to me sounds like the value of hope in practical terms. And so I'm going to press a little bit on the practical component. When it comes to patients actually having access to a therapy, meaning it is covered and they can get through the utilization management barriers. Have you seen, even anecdotally, real option value being used successfully as justification for a payer policy or even individual prior auth decisions? And if not, what is it going to take to get us there?
I guess I'll take that. I guess I haven't really seen or, anyone citing real option value explicitly, as, a justification for their decision. I mean, we've done survey of, oncologists and, they indicated that they would be influenced by, treatments in the pipeline, treatments that may come along, soon they will be influenced in the treatment recommendations, to, the current treatment recommendation to their patients. And I do think, that is kind of one implication of the utilization management, right? They not only limit access to current treatments, but potentially can reduce the real option value that patients can get. Reduce the chance of them not only receiving the treatments but surviving or being able to take advantage of future innovations. So I think that is sort of another implication of real option values.
Question from the live stream.
Yes, we do. Thank you. I have a question from Brian Innes. You touched a little bit on including not only survival, but also progression of disease when thinking about real option value. So wondering if you could talk a little bit more about some of the methods here. How might you implement real option value in progressive diseases beyond survival, where that delaying the progression is the priority for the patient?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's a little technical. So in one of our studies, we actually, incorporated both, progression-free survival, like longer progression-free survival and longer survival in our modeling. And I think it's a case study of alectinib in non-small cell lung cancer. So I can share the information later after the meeting, but essentially, a longer progression-free survival or a longer time during the progression-free state, can increase the eligibility of patients. Once they survive to future innovations, they're more likely to be eligible to receive the treatment. Because if you think about it, if the functional status is so low, if the prior treatment is too debilitating, patients wouldn't be in good health or good enough health to receive the next innovation when it comes along. So, from a modeling perspective, it can be and it has been incorporated.
I think the thing that I'll add, and I'll probably be the least technical here. For progressive diseases, at times you also have to measure if for example, in a cancer patient has a very progressive cancer tumor, like, are they a depressed cancer patient or are they a non-depressed cancer patient? Some of the tools that we utilize kind of, spell that out. And we have found that from a cost and value perspective, that there's almost $100,000 savings for someone who is non-depressed going through cancer. So providing them an alternative form of rehabilitation or just an alternative form of support beyond just the medical is very key to a lot of the work that we do. But we have seen that in a lot of our surveys, as well as the data that we get from partner institutions based on some of our screening tools. So I just wanted to share, like, there is sometimes a value that you can quantify for patients who might need more psychosocial support.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, John. I wanted to ask because in rare diseases, there may be a time that, like the woman said, there are different comorbidities, because if you have a rare, more than likely, if you have one rare disease, you have something else. And when you said something about the cost analysis or the cost, most of our drugs that we use are extremely expensive, and more times than not, what I'm finding is that a lot of parents are trying to fundraise for treatment or even to get into the space. And so my question is, what can we do, or what do you see that can happen in the future, where more pharmaceutical companies are going to do active work to try to find treatments? And we all know that they want to make money, but at the same time, if it's only 5,000 people in the country that has it, and it's $2 million for a month's worth of treatment, would that really be advantageous to go down that road? Or would we be like living in the pandemic where I knew if I got COVID and I went to the hospital, I knew that I was going to die because I have too many issues for them to try to save me versus a quote unquote healthy person? Sorry.
We're a little off real option value there, but I'm happy to try to take your question. I think it's a promising time for the industry and innovation in medicines, and we're reaching more and more pockets that haven't been reached in the past. And so in those rare disease cases and many others, we're making a difference with the medicines we provide to society. And oftentimes the bang for the buck that we get off of medicines at large is very promising for society. Part of that has to do with if we're sort of paying upfront for that innovation, but those medicines are with us over the long run. And so society can benefit from those investments upfront over the long run. But you raise good points, so there are trade-offs that we as society have to be discussing. And I think having discussions about them are important. Because without those discussions and signals to each other about what we care about, it's hard for the industry to move forward in ways that are reflective of those same signals. The other part that I might mention is on the patient side, we're really talking about benefit design, and the cost to the patient are a function of benefit design as well. And we can solve some of those issues that are really separate from who's paying, and patients should really not be paying for medicines that are making a difference in their lives.
Thank you.
We may have time for one more question.
Is this on? Okay. Thank you for bringing me the microphone. I'm going to stand up because I'm going to come out of my skin with enthusiasm for some comments that have been made. I'm Annie Kennedy. I'm with the Everlife Foundation for Rare Diseases, and I didn't know I'd be so excited at a methodology meeting, but these panels have been really incredible today. I just, from the patient community perspective, want to underscore the importance of the real option value in this particular petal of the value flower, the ISPOR flower. We've seen this play out in real time in the rare disease space in recent years, time and again. And one of the things we say in the regulatory setting, oftentimes when we're thinking about products that are moving forward, is that we can't let the perfect get in the way of the good when we have products that we see evidence are slowing disease progression for all of the reasons we've been talking about. Somebody asked the question about whether we've seen this play into an HTA decision. And I remember being at the ICER roundtable for Spinraza when one of the patient advocates who was participating in that roundtable, and many of you were probably a part of that roundtable, had lost a child to SMA type 1 and was talking about the fact that the existence of a new therapy now had she and her husband thinking about having a baby again. And so that to me is in real time what we're talking about when we talk about the impact of not just slowing disease progression or the options though that become available to families when they think about a genetic inherited disease, but the options that there might be something different ahead for themselves or their family members. I also want to say that when Zubair, I believe, was the one making the comment about the costs that are involved in living with a condition that can be quantified when you slow a disease progression. And so you were talking about it from the perspective of mental health, that there are mental health benefits, but there are so many other benefits that we've been talking about here today, or so many other impacts and benefits to slowing disease progression, benefits to caregivers, benefits to being able to go to work, benefits to being able to participate in the community and go to school. And I feel like we're opening the door wide open to expanding the way that we're partnering between patient communities and methodologists to be capturing that data and figuring out how to incorporate it in our modeling earlier, not at the point of a roundtable meeting, but in the clinical trials so that we have that data all the way along. And then just the last comment I'm going to make is when we think about this particular petal, one of the things that we're seeing as products are being approved is that an approval doesn't just open the door to the next product that comes along also, or to that pipeline that moves. But the approval, especially in rare disease, often now means we have better diagnostics, and we can now shorten the diagnostic odyssey for patients because it opens the door to earlier identification of patients and earlier intervention and better clinical guidelines and better clinical care. And what I'm wondering is the degree to which we can think about that in our modeling as well. So expand this not to just the next medical technology or next therapeutic, but think about what else is happening in the ecosystem as a result of this that can be brought into that health economic consideration.
Great comments. Thanks for that. And thank you all for your questions today and your attention. And please join me in thanking our panelists.